Hello, everybody, and welcome back to that Milan podcast. Martino Puccio, Matt Santangelo, alongside you guys. We appreciate all the support. Transfer market is over, so we just wanted to say a quick thank you to everybody. We are on Apple, Spotify for the audio version of the podcast. Again, obviously, subscribe to this channel at that Milan podcast. Follow all of our socials as well. Heavy traction being gained on Instagram and TikTok as always. So again, the support has been immense. We've had a huge summer. Honestly, there was plenty of guests, plenty of views, plenty of drama going on, just like the past 24 hours, which we will get into. But Santangelo, yeah, finally, the transfer market is over. It's been nauseating for us. So we'll hop into that in a second. But anything quickly you wanted to add before we start off here?
Sure. Before we get into all the particulars with the final days of the market and obviously the result against Lecce, a quick shout out to all those who covered the market from a Milan side and did it honestly and did with integrity and didn't do it for clicks, engagements, all the wrong reasons. Sempre Milan did a great job. Their entire team was fantastic, especially their kind of boots on the ground. I know Luca Maninetti did a great job with a lot of the content, and Tony Vitiello, Milan Reports, Vito. So just want to give a quick shout out to those that you covered Milan throughout the Mercato around the clock and gave us all the information we've been utilizing for our recordings.
Yes, and thank you to Stinker for all the great thumbnails as well. He works very hard and helps us out immensely. So again, thank you all for the support. We greatly appreciate all of you. So let's hop right into it in terms of the last match. So Milan beat Lecce. Basically, what ended up happening was a combination of our predictions. You had us scoring 2 goals. I said it was going to be a bitch, but we would get a clean sheet. I think that's exactly how it went because that match was rather infuriating for the most part, especially that first half. Once again, we see Allegri come in, same midfield, rather frustrating with those selections there. Not much he could really change at the back, I guess. Where Koning de Winter would be featured, Tomori should not have been sat because Tomori over the first 2 matches has been Milan's best center back. I think there's zero disputing that. Yunus Musah got a start in this one in what could be his final match for Milan. We'll see what transpires over the course of the next year or so as he heads off to Atalanta. But all in all, Milan really struggling with no Pulisic, no Leao in terms of creation at the start of this. Luka Modric, once again, being the main creator. He should have 3 assists. I think 2 have been taken away by VAR within the first 2 matches. Santi Gimenez goal in the first one, and then this Matteo Gabbia header off the corner. I thought it was incredibly soft, Matt. I don't even see, like, the only reason it was called was because the arm extension, which I kind of understand on a level, but the player went down incredibly easily. Like, it was a joke. It was soft. Like, there wasn't enough force in that to rule out a goal. I thought it was unfortunate for Gabbia, who has a propensity for being a good header of the ball. We've seen him do that quite a few times now, and that one was no different. It's unfortunate in how that one went. Milan had a couple of goals ruled out, technically both correct at the end of the day. So we'll talk about the first half to begin with. This Fofana, RLC, Modric, it's frustrating. Do you agree with this? Because I don't really see the balance that Milan needs right now. And I think Fofana 2 weeks in a row was the weakest link out of the midfield pairing trio.
I think playing both of Fofana and RLC, it's not ideal. And I think obviously we have to understand the fact that even prior to his injury, Arden Yashari did project to be probably a starter. You don't spend upwards of almost 40 million for a player to be a backup, in my opinion. I think due to injuries, due to the fact that he came in late, and there's just a lot of shuffling around of the squad because obviously there was a massive rebuild that took place this summer, an incomplete one, but we'll keep that for another conversation of this episode. I would have liked to see Ricci get a start. I think, when he played against Bari, he looked very good. When he came off the bench in this game in the second half, which we'll discuss, he looked very good, even albeit different circumstances, right? Milan are in a different position in the match, right? So it calls for certain things from certain individuals. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of frustration when you have those two. And obviously, Ruben Loftus-Cheek did get a goal, a nice header. That is something that is a big point of discussion because Allegri has made it very clear that he expects goal production from these two midfielders that he keeps starting. So maybe
so
that has a lot to do with it. Maybe he sees a lot of goal scoring upside that he maybe has to help utilize to replace Tijani Reinders. But when it comes to actually the results, they haven't been that great through 2 games. Again, he did get the goal, but the overall play, in my opinion, has been underwhelming. So I guess we'll wait and see how these things sort of play themselves out. Again, it's match day 2. I didn't expect to be playing the best football so far at this point in the season, but you want to start to kind of see and have an understanding of who's our best 11, who's our best midfield group, and see those sorts of things. And I think the first 2 games have produced a mixed bag of results.
Yeah. I kind of want to like talk about that because I think Modric and Salamakers have easily been the 2 best players over the first 2 matches.
Sure.
I mean, Salamakers is invaluable. I mean, we've been saying it for months. I think plenty of Milan fans have been saying the same thing and what he's capable of bringing to the squad, especially when Allegri is deploying a 3-5-2 lineup. Salamakers as a wingback he's just phenomenal. Like, to be quite honest with you, I think he's really good at it. I even thought Musah was really sound in this match, and I've been beating the drum about this. It's kind of unfortunate he plays one of his better matches and he heads on out, but it's understandable when that option kind of comes in for that amount. For Musah, I think the work rate, the ball carrying ability there, it's all sound. It makes sense. Modric in this one is a dream. And I know some people are like, oh, like I know Marco was talking about it, and a couple other people are like, you can't be playing Modric like this. We're heading into the international break. Milan plays once a week. Modric can kind of handle it. It's just really about the fact that, like, there's no rotation in there, like where Modric can take a break, but we hadn't had to see that immediately. I thought he was amazing in this one. He's just a phenomenal player. He's one of the greatest of all time, and he keeps showing it. The assist to RLC was perfect. Good header by him. Really, as a whole, over 90 minutes, or like the entirety of when RLC was on the pitch, I thought it was fine. It was sound. Milan's defense, there were a couple of instances where you were like, okay, this is a little shaky here, but there was nothing overly threatening outside of a couple of chances for Lecce in that first half. Camarda ends up getting hurt. Estupiñán, I mean, just really struggling. Better second half in this one, not to harp on him entirely, but as a whole, within the first 2 matches in Serie A, Estupiñán has not been up to par, especially against these 2 opponents. And again, Pulisic off the bench, like, this was great. Just add a way to make a contribution here. He just always seems to find a way to score or assist. He does no different in this one. Really seals off the match for Milan. Obviously, he was dealing with an ankle knock prior to this. That's why he wasn't starting. All in all, this is kind of what I've kind of talked to Max and Gino on the MLM podcast has been brought up when they were like, how sick are Milan fans going to get of, like, these sort of results where they play ugly and they get the win? For me, during the 90 minutes, am I annoyed? Sure. There's no denying that, but I'm looking back on it now. 2-0 against Lecce. What else can I ask for, really? That's the result. That's what I wanted. They got it. It's a really difficult place to play as well. Hopefully Camarda's okay. By the way, I think he was getting checked for a concussion, but there were some scary comments about how he didn't really remember part of it, which is really damning.
Seems like the results came back negative, so he seems
okay. So
he did get recalled back, I believe, from international duty with Italy, the U21 team, if I'm correct. So I think that's, again, precaution. They want to make sure that, obviously the head injuries are a very serious matter, not just in football, but in professional sports in this day and age. So, again, wishing him all the best. Hopefully he comes back out of the international break healthy first and foremost, and then hopefully we can see him get his first goal soon. I know you and I were kind of like joking around with him, maybe this being the game that he does get it done. He did some decent things in this match. I think if you
hold up play is great.
Yeah, I think he did some decent things. I mean, again, Lecce didn't really have too many opportunities, but I thought that the biggest thing that stood out for me, again, in a match like this is he didn't feel timid. He didn't feel like, okay, I'm going against my parent club, I'm going to feel a little bit more scared. He used his body in a lot of cases to shield the defenders, hold up play, and a lot of the things that we want to see from him in his loan spell here, right, is utilizing that sort of maturity that he is sort of kind of putting on. So I thought he was fine. Again, he's 17, right? It's match day 2. In preseason, he looked very good. He scored quite a few goals for Lecce in certain competitions against certain opposition. But getting back to Milan here, I thought that, Modric was the clear-cut man of the match. I mean, through 2 match days, him and Alexis have been sort of the standard performers for Milan. I think you really can't look to anybody else and say they've come close to what they've produced. Modric, again, even the assist that for the goal that Matteo Gabbia scored that got ruled off. I mean, pinpoint corner, right? Like right in the box. Fire. Let me go find one of my bigger targets in the box. Finds him. Perfect header. He actually kind of was like the way this game was going. Like my predictions kind of weren't too far off. If you guys remember in the last episode, I said Santi and Modric would score. Now Modric had an assist that led to a goal, obviously, and he had another one that got called off. And Santi did score, but then it was also called off. So it wasn't too far off. I was kind of.
You also had us conceding. You said you couldn't see us keeping a clean sheet.
Yeah. So I mean, I wasn't too far off. But again, just to kind of put a bow on the performance, I think that probably where people have the biggest concern is they want to start to see like some identity and free flowing and like kind of control of some of these games, because match day 1 obviously was a disaster. This game on paper 2-0, like to your point, you'll take that. Obviously it could have been a couple more goals because of those that were ruled off. So again, guys, it's the growing pains. There's players kind of coming in and out. I mean, look at the conversations surrounding this game, right? Santi, he's probably going to leave. Musah, he's also probably going to leave. Both those guys start, and you get a 2-0 win. You don't really have your full team here, in my opinion. You don't really have kind of an understanding of what the core group is going to be for at least half the season heading into January. So let's wait and see. I think the important thing is Milan gets the victory, the result here that they truly needed after the abysmal start. Going into international break, the one thing I do want to make point of, Martino, is we do have Bologna coming out of the break. And Modric has played, 70-plus minutes in the match day 1. He played all of the game against Lecce. And he is going on international duty with Croatia. So let's keep an eye on that, because Ricci didn't get called up by Italy. So maybe we see Ricci in that game against Bologna if, again, Modric does put on more minutes in the international break with Croatia.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from, but like Allegri has been a bit perplexing within these first couple.
No, we might see Modric.
I get you. I just and what happened prior to the match when I knew Richie wasn't starting was I tweeted, Richie's going to come on for like a feature, and we're immediately going to be like, why wasn't this guy starting the game? And then we go into the international break having to wait for him to play again. So essentially what happened, and we might actually have to keep waiting longer because of this. Adrien Rabiot is a Milan player. This happened relatively quick. There was a pun intended row with a player at Marseille, Rowe, who is going to be on Bologna now as they both face off after the international break. This was one of the actual requests fulfilled by management for Allegri. As a whole, right? Rabiot is a good player. This fee is fine. He is just 30 years of age, and in Serie A, it's not that old. This is a champion of Serie A, obviously winning all those trophies in Paris with PSG over those years. We know the drama surrounding him and his mother, some of the stuff in the locker room, but this is a good player. This is definitely a good player. I think he's an upgrade on Fofana, RLC, Musah, all those midfielders. Even Ricci, he's a better midfielder, but they're different profiles, right? So it's like different when you go like for like that. I'm fine with the fee. It's just around 10 million. He is getting paid 5 million net per season. Naturally, that's what it's going to be when you're signing a player like that is always on high wages, and how his mother is and how all those negotiations happen. The fact is, on paper, Rabiot to Milan is an upgrade on paper. It just is. The question is, over time, and what we see with Yashardi and how he recovers from his injury, how does Allegri balance minutes? Who does he start? Who sits? Who loses more time as Milan play once a week? Yes, they play Lecce in Coppa Italia very soon, but how quickly do these players adapt? I think Rabiot, considering Allegri, their history, I think Rabiot is going to be playing from minute 1. I think he's going to be starting. We'll see kind of his health. Maybe he has to come off the bench for this first match against Bologna. But I truthfully think that Rabiot is going to bring in some much-needed leadership on the pitch as well with his experience. I think it'll help loosen things up for Modric. I think this is just a good player. At the end of the day, the fee's not crazy. Sure, the wages are a little bit higher, but you know what? It's Milan. You got eventually just guys have to get paid. Just it is what it is. You're gonna probably not like everybody's salary and wages, but I caution you on the side of Origi and Benacer getting only paid 1 million less per season. Okay. And those guys are both on the roster right now. So for me, I think on paper, Rabiot, good move. But I understand why fans are upset as a whole with the market. So what are your thoughts on Rabiot to Milan?
Rabiot is a fine addition for Milan. I think the money's good. The wages, you knew what was coming with that, right? Dealing obviously with his mother, the fact that he does sort of have that pedigree and that history, playing at big clubs. PSG, Marseille's a big club. Juventus is a big club. He's played and been a prominent member of the French national team for years. So the wages don't really surprise me. I think this was a 3-year deal or 4-year deal. So
3-year with a 1-year option.
With an option, right? So you're still getting him for by all accounts his prime, right? He's 30 years old. He feels like he's been around for a while. But when you see 30 in the football world, you're like, this guy's been around for more than a decade already, right? Because they start young. So I think that at the fee, at the wages, the experience level, and the familiarity between him and the coach, you have a plug and play option in Rabiot. And I think that that's kind of what Milan needed. I think what really I like about this move more than anything is it does raise the bar of our overall midfield. And by that, I mean, when you look at the amount of options we do have, we did, bring in a substantial amount of midfielders this summer. You sold Tijani, but you brought in 4 other guys that, when you put them with Loftus-Cheek and Fofana and you subtract some of the other guys that have already left and could leave in Adli and Benacer, you have to ask yourself as a Milan fan, did we raise the overall profile and overall quality of the midfield? And I always look and I always say this to people is the strength is in who is the worst midfielder on your team in terms of pecking order and how good is that player? And I look at this Milan team and you think, okay, fine. Even with Yashari out until probably December, maybe January, when it comes time to him to kind of, get back into match fitness, you still have Ricci, you still have Modric, you still have Fofana, Loftus-Cheek, and you have Rabiot. All those players pretty much play for their national team too. Like they're regular call-ups. So I think that, again, this is a good deal. I don't think, of amongst all of the things to get annoyed and bothered with regards to Milan, which we will talk about with the summer market, this isn't one of those. I mean, I think that we've been pretty honest and fair and trying to judge each individual move as it comes, regardless of what we may feel about what's happening with other deals or deals that are not happening. Rabiot for 10 million, the length of the contract, what he provides in the immediate is someone that I think, again, the adaptation phase is not really there. Obviously, he's playing with different players than what he has previously, but you have Fofana in the team, right? That he obviously plays, or at least has familiarity with and understanding with the French national team. You have Mike Maignan. You have guys in this team that he's also comfortable with, and he, again, knows the coach. So I don't really see much of a downside with this move.
Yeah, I agree with that. We'll end up see what's happening with Milan and their midfield decisions. There's a lot of cooks there, so Allegri is going to have to figure out the minutes. Speaking of figuring out things with Allegri, Christopher Nkunku. I mean, this is a huge signing. This is one of the most expensive signings in Milan's history. For some reason, doesn't really feel like that because how quickly it really transpired. The level of talent with this player. This is just genuinely, now that I have time to think about this, Matt, this is bizarre. Honestly, Nkunku, right? So I'll talk about the player here, and this is kind of where, shocker, people were conflating and misunderstanding where I was coming from. The player in itself is a superb talent, a really nice talent. There is injury history there. Chelsea is dysfunctional on certain levels. Where they were able to put him in, Cole Palmer was really in a similar position of where Nkunku would be best to thrive within that Chelsea side. Chelsea collected a lot of talent, had trouble kind of placing them in the proper areas, and then they were really selling off quite a bunch of them, right? We already seen Nkunku and Nicholas Jackson move on, and those were players that were pretty big at the start of this, rejuvenated project in the attack that they were going for. They're both out the door already. Nkunku, where Milan currently sit in a system, it's weird for where he'll be. Truthfully, it's going to have to be him and Leao to play in that 3-5-2. If you have to play both of them, they have to play off of each other. There's no denying that. Where Pulisic goes is where I'm concerned. where, Santi on a regular basis, how he plays, I'm a little concerned. This also, truthfully, if you want to play all these attacking players, technically the best formation to have all of them on the pitch is a 4-2-3-1, which is hilarious because Milan still don't have that personnel and have way too many midfielders to field the 4-2-3-1 with those two, because it would have to be Leao on the left, Nkunku center, Pulisic on the right, and Santi up top. That's realistically what they would have to do with that. And you would have to figure out the two midfielders in that double pivot. I kind of don't see that happening for Milan. I think they might have to do something in regards to a 3-4-3. Maybe a 3-5-2 does happen, where Pulisic maybe gets a break or something, or like they start off a match with that. I think Allegri has his work cut out for him with this. His comments reflected that, because he said he doesn't really know where Nkunku is going to play. Maybe it could be some gamesmanship, not to give away ideas to people in general on what he's going to do with him. But talent level, there's no question. It's just fascinating to see Milan spend so much money on a player who has an injury history, where they refuse to really do anything for Boniface, where it was just a loan with option. Nkunku's money up front. This is a full-time purchase. There's a percentage of the resale if he does explode and Milan decide to sell him, because they like to be ran like losers. But all in all, on paper, this is a huge upgrade in talent in the attack, I think, like relative to what was there before with like a Chukwueze, really, and Jovic and Okafor prior to that. Nkunku could play, right-sided, up top, false nine, number 10. He's a versatile player, but he has no solidified position, which causes some concern. What are your thoughts as a whole with Nkunku? Because this really happened relatively quick.
I like the talent. I like the quality that Nkunku brings. I think anyone who's watched him over the past handful of years at RB Leipzig, where he was a demon for them, the goals, assists, guy was a menace, and largely that's why Chelsea spent what they did to bring him to Stamford Bridge, right? And obviously, you mentioned the injuries, and there might be something to that. I mean, I think again, when we talked about Pulisic, and Pulisic himself talked about this when he came over to Milan from Chelsea, he said the thing that kind of was a detriment to him there was when he came back from injury, there was like a lot of start-stop, and almost in a way, when you have to sit on the bench for as long as some of these guys do, when you have an abundance of options and luxuries like Chelsea do in certain areas that Nkunku plays, you're sitting for such a long time. You're not getting those full minutes. You're training, yes, but then you have to, okay, give me 90 in the Carabao Cup. And now you have to run. And the stop and go, I think, is something that maybe needs to be kind of looked at a little bit more with some of these players that are on these clubs that have a lot of options, because Pulisic, again, injury history. Is this guy going to stay healthy? Knock on wood, he's come to Milan, and by all accounts, he's been pretty healthy. He had a couple moments last year where he was out for a little period of time, but generally speaking, he's been healthy, and he's answered those questions since he's come to Milan. So I'm hoping that Milan are able to mirror that in such a way when Nkunku, where maybe he is fully healthy, he passed the medical, maybe he is completely healed from those previous injuries, and that's what Milan are banking on, because he's not a player that's 30, 31, 32. He's got a lot of great football left in him, in my opinion. And again, it's never been a matter of the quality. I tweeted this when we were first linked to him a couple of days ago, and obviously things kind of came together pretty quickly. That's never been the issue, is Milan are spending this much money on a permanent solution, and that's what makes it more confusing because of other areas that they needed to address, but also the fact that we've been told, and this has been conveyed to us by multiple media outlets and whoever, that they don't like to take these risks. They like to go for the younger player who, if all else fails, they can at least flip him, and they're really not out that much money. So that's the confusion there. And then on top of the fact that you just mentioned and highlighted, where does he fit within this whole system and that the amount of attackers we do have? Because before he even arrived, Martino, we were talking about where's Pulisic fit. And if Alexis is playing the way he's playing, he's undroppable, in my opinion. I think.
For the right wing back spot.
These are some of the things that I'm kind of pondering around in my head, is how does Allegri make this all work? And that's why he's the coach. So that is going to be very curious to see unfold. These are professionals.
Yeah.
You're going to have guys like Nkunku who, again, you spend what you spend, you're not spending almost 40 million for him to be a backup. Rafa,
Yeah,
we
no,
know what his
exactly.
role is going to be. Pulisic,
You
he's been your
can't
best
sit
player
him
for the
with his
past 2
production.
years. Is he a bench player now? And we don't know what his contract situation is going to look like. So this is going to be very interesting.
I think it is interesting on a whole. I think a lot of it banks on like Milan's position going forward in terms of the Champions League and where they move forward with that. I don't ultimately think Pulisic's going to leave. I think a lot of this is kind of like up in the air. You hear some really good comments from Maignan regarding like these two players like Nkunku and Rabiot, and like Maignan was saying like great things about it, which is like a good thing. That's why I really love Maignan from a leadership perspective. Despite everything that's happened with him, I hope they get that renewal over the line. Milan really finished net positive, I think it would like 70 million in terms of sales. So it would cover the cost of a lot of the negatives that had happened with them in terms of missing out on Europe in total. I do think a 4-3-3 is still in their future as well. I wouldn't completely rule that out. It's just, who does he trust at the right back position? Athakame is really a big question mark. Cody De Winter, I think, has the capability of playing at that right back position. Who sits as out of those center backs? It's really perplexing to see what the idea is with them in terms of tactics. It seems like they were like, oh, we like that player for this price. We want to bring him in. We don't really have an idea of where they're going to go.
Martino, what's also interesting too is Alex Gimenez being sold to Bournemouth, because that was a player that, coming into this season or towards the end of last season, by all account, that was Milan's starting wingback, fullback, whatever. I know he played as like a winger too when we had injuries, but profile-wise, he slots in as a wingback, fullback. He leaves. Milan does not get another right back. So you look at sort of the personnel in those departments. You have Alexis. You have a young Bartasaghi, very inexperienced. You have Estupinian, and you have Athakame, and maybe De Winter if you feel that he's someone who can play in those areas. So I'm wondering if the plan, again, I don't agree with this plan. This is just something that popped into my head. Is there's a way that Pulisic can figure out a role within this team as a starter? Not saying he's going to be a fullback. I'm not saying he's going to be a wingback. But if it's a 3-4-3, you might be able to play him and Alexis and some of these guys, because Pulisic has the work rate to get forward enough to still be an offensive contributor. But he's a worker, and he will come back and defend. So again, I think long term, I refuse to believe Allegri is going to be stuck and so stubborn in his ways of throwing out this 3-5-2 when you simply have too many attacking options and attacking riches like we do now, in my opinion.
It's not the greatest of depth because it's realistically like 4 players if you want to count Salome. Salamakers is a bit different. Like he can play as a winger in like a 4-3-3 system, but he's primarily best used as a wing back in the 3-back system. So we'll see what happens there. Relatively big move for that. So we'll go over to like kind of like this last second sort of at the buzzer move by Milan. David Odogu from Wolfsburg to Milan is a relatively inexperienced player. Really only 3 matches under his belt at the top flight, 2 full matches in Bundesliga. Respected as a youth talent and a prospect, but nothing overly glowing. I've seen a lot of discourse revolving around how people somehow think it's the same as Leone and him. Experience-wise is one of the dumbest things that I keep reading. I think it's like genuinely stupidity that I keep seeing when it comes to this. Leone played half a season, okay, which is substantially more than just 2 full matches that Odogu did. The price reflected in that. Many of teams saw what Leone did against some of the top sides in Serie A and top strikers, and they said, wow, this kid has elite potential. Heavily sought after, right? The top 3 Italian clubs, we knew Parma was able to drive up that price, and a team like, Liverpool was willing to pay that. Odogu here, we don't know what kind of player this will be. We'll see how he's going to be able to get some minutes.
He's played real quick before you continue, Martin, just so I have the numbers up here. So he made 3 appearances, right? They said first team appearances for Wolfsburg last year. Started in 2 of them, played 3. He played 194 minutes in the top flight. Leone.
Same as Leone.
Well, let me give you the number on Leone. So Leone played 17 matches last year. He started in 14. He played 1,203. So I'm not saying like the thought process isn't there because they're similar age, right? Like you're looking at the fees. One went for 10, one went for almost 40 million. I'm just saying, like, we at least seen enough or a little bit more of Giovanni Leone to be like, oh yeah, like Inter, Juve, all these clubs wanted him. When it came to Odogu, truthfully, again, I'm not familiar with German footballers and the youth of German football, but I didn't really see many people kind of giving like perspective on this. So if there's anybody that's familiar with German football, and whether it be with the younger national teams or even in like Wolfsburg's youth that have been like, oh yeah, this has been a highly sought after commodity. He's a big time prospect despite not having a lot of first team minutes. Get down in the comments, give us some input on that. But I think the conversations don't really match up because you can see a young player. Sometimes you just know when you see him for 1,200, 1,300 minutes. Oh yeah, this guy's good. He just translates. He projects to be very good for us. Let's get him now before he has a great season at Parma. And he's 60, 70 million. So that's kind of where the thought process is there, but continue.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's such a fallacy, and like if you think it's like for like, it's just delusional. I mean, even those two matches he played full are not at the level of Napoli and Inter, and then Juventus. Like it's just there is a staunch difference, and this is also prior to everyone wanting him before the Coney de Winter move. We knew once Coney de Winter came in, that was like, okay, that's the younger center back with experience, some experience that they want to plug in for the future at a good price. I don't dislike the De Winter move, but we knew the corresponding move that Milan had to make after that was an experienced center back to help these players because these are not good enough center backs. These are not established players at that level. Pavlovic is a huge question mark still. He's incredibly raw. Even if you like him, dislike him, he's still raw at that level. Matteo Gabbia, we know what his ceiling is. He's probably close to it already. Tomori is Jekyll and Hyde. Either he's really good or like you're like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And De Winter to supplant a Tomori in this 3-back system, we talk about it. They both play in the same spot in that 3-back system. De Winter or Tomori are not going in that central center back role. And these aren't great ball progressors. I mean, De Winter is better on the ball technically than these other center backs that we have starting. It's just where is Odogu going to get these minutes and to earn the trust of Max Allegri, nonetheless, to get featured?
Who basically called for an experienced defender, and they gave him a young kind of prospect that needs to be nurtured, right, and developed.
Yeah.
And I had this conversation with someone yesterday on X where, they were saying, well, why are we so like down on a player? We were interested in Leone. This guy's of the similar age. Why are we not willing to give this guy the opportunity? And he might be talented. Same thing with Atakame. These guys might be talented. We don't really know. We have to wait and see. But I think I know Allegri well enough from what we've seen from him as a coach over the years. Yeah. And I think I have a good enough grasp on Milan and what this season's going to hold for them. Is Milan are not really in a position of luxury where they can say, you know what? We're playing all these competitions. We know we're going to win games. We can try out these younger players. They need to get every single point they're going to get. And unless those main defenders are banged up, cannot play, I don't see really many opportunities, in my opinion, for where Odogu is going to get substantial amounts of minutes. He might get the one-off game where he comes in for 15, 20 minutes, and then the next game he might be on the bench. They play once a week. So that's the thing, guys. Yeah. People don't misconstrue this. I'm happy with getting a young, potentially great value center back in Odogu, and no disrespect to him, but let me make that very clear, because this is a great opportunity for him. He's going from Wolfsburg to Milan. Milan's first team. Malik Chow, he didn't have much experience at Schalke. They brought him in. He's going to play for AC Milan. Paolo Maldini thought he was good enough to play for AC Milan. So good on the kid. I wish him all the best. But I think it's very clear that if you're going to go for this formation, you're going to have the central defensive personnel that we had last year. This is the same defense we had last year that got us to 8th place. Right? If you don't think that Coney de Winter is going to start, right? Yeah. That's the issue.
Yeah.
I'm happy with bringing in a young prospect. And in many ways, prime example, look what Liverpool did. They went out, granted money's different, to make that very clear.
Yeah.
They have their central defensive personnel. They have their starters, right? They brought in Leone because they like what the future holds for him, and they understand Virgil van Dijk ain't getting any younger. Eventually, they're going to have to maybe move on from him, and they're going to need to usher in a new era at the back.
Yeah.
Who else were they going after, Martino? Mark Gahey, right?
Yeah.
An established international with England, Crystal Palace, really, really good.
Very good team, yeah.
Right? Granted, the money's different, but you just mentioned it. Net spend, we've made out for about 60 to 70 million. There's room there that if we really wanted to, in my opinion, we could have gotten another defender of the more experienced level. If you got him with Odogu, fans would have been able to digest that a little bit more. That's the conversation here, guys.
Yeah, because I mean, they were like literally in for a Kanji who didn't want to go to them, and then Joe Gomez was another one, and then they settled for this. That's like my problem is the inconsistencies in what they're going after in terms of profiles. Like it's nonsensical to me. That's the problem. It's not Odogu as a player. It's not the idea of him. It's the idea that it was a Kanji and Joe Gomez, and then they go for Odogu. Those are all completely different. It just doesn't make sense on that level. And again, once you play once a week, it's hard to crack in and get minutes. Also with this was just like insane. The entirety of this with Santi Gimenez, who's staying at Milan for who knows. We don't want to jump ahead to January, but the reality of it here is that Santi Gimenez was more or less being pushed out by the club. The sporting director prior to the match against Lecce and Igliatare was talking about a swap between Dobiek and Santi and Milan and Roma, where Ricky Masada had to come out prior to Roma's match against Pisa, where he was saying, no disrespect to Tare, I don't want to be rude or anything, but there's nothing close in regards to that. So, like, you're already putting that out there. There's been rumors all summer about Santi potentially leaving. And just the idea of it, and I made the video about it and the short that has been uploaded on our channels. And my point is this. It's not if you like Santi, if you want to get rid of Santi. It's the fact that you spent money on Santi in January, backing a manager that you knew was likely to leave at the end of the 6 months, and you get someone new in who has different philosophies and will look at players differently, and which has already been confirmed as such. Would he like that striker that you paid all that money for? Because you're trying to save face to maybe get back into Europe, hoping he adapts in a system with different players. It just didn't make sense. And they should have kept Santi and added another striker, because quality up front on paper, Santi being your weakest of the attackers, is a really good thing. But it's also lacking depth, because one injury, God knows what could happen. We've already seen how they struggle a little bit without Leao. Santi staying, I'm more than fine with. I would have liked Dobiek as well. I don't dislike him as a player. There's nothing wrong with him, but it was more of a lateral move for me. And you're also low-key strengthening a rival for top four in Roma, because Santi, similar qualities to Matteo Retegui, where he could thrive in that sort of system. And we also didn't get an opportunity to really see Santi thrive on a consistent basis within this league, adapting alone, and these attacking players around him. We've seen offside goals rolled out. We've seen him get put into pretty good positions. As a striker, as his main job, I think he does a pretty decent enough in terms of production, where he got paid, where it goes upwards of 35 million if they reach significant bonuses, right? You're going to get that. That's the ceiling with those players. Again, guys, if you want him to have great hold-up play, great passing ability, great pressing, guys, his values triple. That's what you have to remember. He would be out of Milan's price range. And again, I brought this up to you last night as well. And dude, he was better than Morata in the 6 months that he's been here. Morata was terrible in comparison to him, especially with goal production. So, like, for me, I think that Santi deserved more of a chance. We see him stay. Whether or not he wanted to stay, whether or not management wanted to keep him is a different story. And that could cause some confidence issues that we've kind of seen on the pitch. What do you make of this entire saga that he's ended up staying at the club, despite the fact it seemed like they were trying to push him out?
You know, loyalty and commitment within a relationship, it's a two-way street, right? And I think, you know, we look at how things played out with other transfers this entire summer, not just in Italy, across Europe, right? Where, you know, player signs a contract, you know, he has ambitions to go for bigger, better opportunities. He wants to win trophies, and you'd like to think the club is going to sort of accommodate him in that, right? If he wants to move on, right? We saw it with Isak, we saw it with Mark Gahey in 2 different scenarios right there, right? And I think that's kind of where my head was at with this whole Santiago Gimenez thing, because we brought this guy in January. Mid-season, he moves from Feyenoord, where he had a lot of success. I think back-to-back seasons in all competitions for them, he had 20-plus goals, right? This is a player that has produced. And I know people might say, well, that's not Serie A. That's not a top league. You can only do what's in front of him, right? And he it's worth pointing out that his actually Champions League record is really good, too. Like, he had 6-7 goals in like 11 or 12 games.
Yeah.
Maybe better. So you bring the guy in, and he's ecstatic to join Milan. We've seen the photos of him, like childhood dream to play for this club, right?
Yeah.
You bring him in unfortunate circumstances with the club because everything was out of desperation for Milan, right? They make the change to Sergio Conceição. We had an understanding, at least at some point through that period, that he's probably not going to stay. There was friction, there was issues, and
so many
philosophies and differences there. So now you bring a new coach in. And like all the coach says, like, I want to see the player. He even said, he's only been here for 20 days. Like Allegri was saying all the right things about Santi, despite what the media is saying that he don't really want him. He wants someone different. He wants Dusan Vlahovic. So my argument is this. Does Santi have deficiencies in his game? Yes. We've seen it in the appearances so far this season, right? The struggles to trap the ball in certain spots, use his body, be physically imposing, all those sorts of things that we were told that Allegri really wanted, and he might still want. But the player was so hell-bent on proving himself that I can play at Milan. This is a club I wanted to be at. I want to repay that to the fans. I know I can play here. And I think that has some value to me. Yeah. I understand it's very cutthroat. Milan need to get goals. They need to get top 4 this year at the minimum. So you can't play and pull on the heartstrings and be like, yeah, but he likes it here and we got to keep him. We can't go and get another striker. I get all that. I truly do. But I think that that's sort of where my head is at with this. Because if this player was given a season plus, and we were sort of in this sort of camp and belief that, he still had these issues. He wasn't growing the way we needed him to grow. We spent a ton of money. I could understand that. That's number one. Number two, if I thought Dovbyk was a clear-cut upgrade over Santi, I would say, okay, he's 4 or 5 years older than him, right? He had the 1 year at Girona. I think the other good pop-off year he had was in the Ukraine, first division, right? So if you're going to use the argument that Santi hasn't done in the big league, he did it once at Girona, and he went to Roma, and he was okay last year. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? So that's sort of where I'm at with this. I'm willing to give him more time to prove himself, and I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt because this looks genuinely like a player that loves it here and really wants to succeed here. And I think fans also can't lose sight of those things. If you're not going to go out there and give me a clear-cut upgrade and clear-cut solution, then I'm okay with keeping Santi, provided that he is in this time next year able to produce goals. And if he's not, then obviously Milan need to make that decision and get someone who can.
Yeah. Which has been the big question for 15 years now. Yep. There was some news just real quick on the Yashari fracture involving Santi. I mean, kind of unfortunate. Like, listen, like it was definitely, this stuff doesn't happen on a regular basis. Sure, you get knocks, you get clashes. A fracture is a fracture of the fibula. We're looking at maybe a December return for Yashari, just a really bumpy ride to start his career at Milan. It's unfortunate. We'll see what happens. Hopefully he makes a full recovery. So yeah, Yashari, unfortunate situation there. So we just want to highlight that quickly because it happened after we recorded the podcast and prior to the match against Lecce. So hopefully it's a speedy recovery. He doesn't have to take till December and we can get this player of quality back till then. The good news is Milan have enough midfield quality playing once a week that they could survive this. So yeah, quick thoughts on that before we go to the outgoing players and wrap up.
Yeah, so I mean, if you look at everything you just said there, plus also the fact that there is a couple international breaks mixed in within this 2+ month leg off for him. I mean, if you're able to get a player that's fresh, granted, he still is going to take some time to integrate. He came in very late to this team, and you're able to get him for the second half of the season. I mean, I'm going to pull a Galliani term and say it's like a new signing for me, right? Because it is. And it's crazy that we're having to say that a new signing, when he comes back in 3 months, is like a new signing, but it truly is going to be. Yeah. So Yeah, I mean, I think, I was on Spaces on Friday or
Yeah.
Thursday, and once the news came out that Yashari was injured, like, my heart literally sank. I was like, come on, man. Like, really? Amongst everything happening in the market, this guy gets injured who held out for only Milan for the entire summer. He doesn't get his opportunity to sort of kick on and play from the immediate. We got to wait and see.
Signing in club history.
Next man up mentality, to your point. Like, that's why Milan went out there and got the numbers in the midfield, right? To have this depth, right? So I'm not concerned with the depth. I think it'll give opportunity to guys like Ricci, probably, Rabiot to play and to get those opportunities to showcase themselves here. So wish him a speedy recovery first and foremost. And at least it's not a hamstring injury. I think people kind of see injury like fracture and see injury like certain things.
Yeah.
I almost, in a way, like, again, not preferring one injury over the other, but if this was like a hamstring injury that was nagging, those things can be nagging the entire season unless you're sitting out for a substantial period of time.
Yeah.
So it's not muscular. It's a freak accident, guys. Let's hope he comes back 100%. That's the key here. No need to rush him back. One competition. We got options. And then let's get him back for the second half of the season. That's where he can make his difference.
Hopefully a big push, yeah. Just the final thing on the market, and just to wrap up for the episode, Chukwueze to Fulham, Musah to Atalanta. They're both options. Musah extended his contract before he left. The options will be around 30 million. Chukwueze did not extend his contract, but the option for Fulham is around 25 to 30. I don't think either get triggered. I think this is very similar to Noah Okafor's situation with the Napoli loan. I don't see either player doing so well that these clubs are like, yeah, absolutely. Maybe Fulham, because Premier League money is a little different. Maybe Chukwueze produces there. I'm not fully certain because of Atalanta's project. If Gasperini was there, he asked for Musah. It's a little different. I don't think Atalanta are that good. I don't think Juric is that good. I think there's going to be a situation where they could miss European football entirely. And if that were to happen, there's no chance that they're triggering 30 million. I just hope, for Musah's sake, in a World Cup year, as an Italian American, that there is progression enough from him that solidifies that his career is heading in the right direction, because I think he's stagnated at best the past couple of seasons at Milan. And, some of it's his fault. Some of it's obviously the club not providing him a perfect enough environment for him to succeed in. So for me, I think that's really where this lies for Musah. Chukwueze obviously never hit the ground running at the club. Pulisic really just solidified himself as that right winger. And then again, Chukwueze, inconsistent play, really probably not the best within Serie A for his style. Loses the ball a little easily, not the greatest in tracking back and being physical. The technical ability, and when he's able to get forward, I think he's still really good. I think he had really good moments in time, but at Milan, with the price that was paid for him, it's just not going to work out in the direction where Milan are going right now. Hopefully he has a good time at Fulham and they trigger that option, because I don't think this is going to work out long-term for him at the club. So those two out the door. Adli, Benacer, we'll see what ends up happening with them. They're trying to offload them. The Turkish window ends up closing on the 12th of this month. So there's still some time to potentially offload them over there. We'll see what happens with that. I think those moves are on the table and they just neither wanted it. So it's kind of where Milan are at. It seemed like both want to go to Ligue 1, but neither moves transpired because no clubs wanted to pay a permanent transfer. So that's where they're at with those. Quick thoughts on those exits and potential exits.
Yeah, I mean, I think, when we brought in Chukwueze and Musah, obviously we expected more from them. That was a big pivotal summer for us. We sacrificed Sandro Tonali to fund that market, and we went with the numbers game. We went with quantity, and at the time of us bringing in Chukwueze, in addition to Okafor and Pulisic, there was that high risk or that high probability that one or two of them might not work out. Like, they might be flop signings, because that's typically what happens. They were brought in similar departments, especially on the right side with Chukwueze and Pulisic. It was just going to be a matter of, okay, compete. Who's strongest survives. And it's been Pulisic head and shoulders. He's been the better player. Brought him in for cheaper too. And when Chukwueze has played, it's difficult because he hasn't been able to cement himself. It's challenging when you're an attacker, especially how confidence sort of lives and dies by like goals and assists, right? That's how people are going to typically judge you in the end, right? He just didn't really get, in my opinion, like the consistent run of games. And He didn't earn it over Pulisic. That's just kind of plain and simple.
Yeah.
So hopefully he does well at Fulham, because if he does well at Fulham and they love him and he does well in a top league like the Premier League, they have the money, they have the financial wherewithal to be able to be like, okay, fine, like this is a great deal. Let's bring him in. He's still pretty young. And he did do some great things at Villarreal. It's not like this is a player that was an unknown going to Milan. Like he had a really good career at Villarreal in La Liga, scored some big goals against top opposition there. So I think there's optimism there that maybe they will trigger that, because again, the money and the opportunity to do it is there. Musah's a little bit different, because if it was Gasperini, and I can see Musah going to Atalanta and being just the next full wing back, he converts and he hits the ground running. I think that that's the key, though, right? If I'm just being, a bit more unselfish on the side of, how I wanted to favor Milan, more so with the player, is I think that we need to get an understanding of what type of role he should have in this league, in this sport, right? Because he's at that age where I think you have to sort of define and understand, is he a wing back? Is he a traditional midfielder? I think we've seen some good things from him in a wing back position. That Real Madrid game last year for Milan was fantastic. It's probably his best game for Milan. And that was as a wing back.
Maybe.
So we'll wait and see. Again, if it was Gasperini, I had more confidence, and I think you're pretty spot on. I think that Atalanta might see some regression, and they might be in a position where they say, that's a little steep for us. You guys can have him back. So wish them both well.
Yeah. We'll see what ends up happening on all those fronts, guys. We appreciate all your support so much. MLM podcast, Semper Milan podcast, pub chat with Steph and Lorenzo, me Marco's channel, Miguel AJ is doing good content back on TikTok. It's good to see Miguel back in that regard. Old Heart Rosonero, highly suggest his channel as well. We're going to try and get him on as a guest. Milan Weekly Podcast, Milan Coast to Coast. We appreciate everybody that's been kind and supportive of us, and we like to reflect that same energy, regardless of whatever people say comments wise. So we're really happy with everyone that supported us in the community that we have here, and all the comments that we get. You guys rate the market in the comments section below. Give us all your support. Again, all the social media stuff, Matt _Santangelo on Twitter, at AC Milan Bros on Twitter, Matt _Santa22 on Instagram for all Matt stuff. Again, written content, video content here as well. That Milan podcast is everywhere. Apple, Spotify, give us 5-star reviews. Other than that, that's pretty much it. So we appreciate you. Take care.